Ready for your weekly tech fix? Want to know how technology sets us free? Well, get ready because here it comes. You're listening to Sovryn Tech with your host, entrepreneur and technophile Brian Sovryn. He's got a huge brain. And now, here's Brian.
Here I am, the golden stallion of the tech world, ready for another great episode of Sovryn Tech. This episode is on location, though I am not going to say where on location. Testing out the Blue Yeti, which has gotten great results in the past from if you listen to this week, there was a special about the Zoom H1 handy recorder. And Dr. Stephanie Murphy and we tested that out, and of course she is the hyper-intelligent and lovely Stephanie Murphy that is also the producer of the show, and it turned out really, really well, and she has actually used the Blue Yeti before on various podcasts, and it always turned out really well. So now I'm giving it a shot, and we'll see exactly just how well everything turns out. And we are on episode 20 of Sovryn Tech. Can you believe it? 20 episodes. Feels like it's been going on forever, but then at the same time, it feels like I've only been doing a few of them. But yeah, we are 20 episodes in. I don't know if that's any cause for celebration, but it is what it is. If you want to, just a couple quick notes here. If you want to help, if you're looking for ways to help this show completely for free, if you want to help out Sovryn Tech, one of my goals, kind of one of my life missions, is to actually get on to what's called This Week in Tech. And it's run by Leo Laporte, who is one of the greats in the radio business. And he actually has an entire network called twit.tv, obviously referencing This Week in Tech. And I would love to get onto that show and to be able to really, maybe get a little bit of a liberty message in there. There's guys like John C. Dvorak, who's calls himself a libertarian. I mean, he's not an anarchist by any means, but he calls himself a libertarian. And he's on there, but I'd really love the tech world in general is really moving in a liberty direction as far as I can tell, at least in some ways. And so, hey, if we can get a full-on anarchist and into the big leagues of tech journalism, I think that'd be a great thing. So if I'll put a link in the show notes. If you want to email them, contact them and say, hey, I listen to the show Sovryn Tech. I really appreciate what things Brian Sovryn has to say. It's a very unique tech show, however you want to lay me out. And, just say to them, yeah, if you want to have them on Tech News Today or This Week in Tech, I'd really enjoy that. Also, if you haven't checked out twit.tv, please do so. It is, you can watch it as video. You don't have to just listen to it as audio. And it's the best television you could watch to begin with anyway. It's really, really good stuff if you're inclined to watch television. Another quick note is that I have stopped the Thursday episodes of what I was doing on Google Plus, just to kind of get people to come on to Google Plus. I was releasing the show a day early through YouTube on Thursdays to the Sovryn Tech Google Plus page. I will not be doing that anymore. It just wasn't getting any play, and it was just kind of adding an extra stress to make sure this is uploaded onto YouTube. And I do the YouTube thing as a courtesy because it's absolutely annoying to make the video and post it up there. But it's fine. People have requested it and it's good exposure, so I'll do it. That's okay. But if it's not something that's going to be taken advantage of, I'm just why do it? The purpose in life is to be happy. And so, why do something that's annoying in the first place, again, if no one's going to take advantage of it? It will still be posted on YouTube. Don't worry about that. Also, you will notice the Sovryn Tech Google Plus page is now gone. The reason for that is not that my Google Plus presence is shrinking or that's going away, but I'm deeper integrating into Google Plus. And what I want is listeners of the show, you'll find the links on sovryntech.com, at the SoundCloud page, everywhere. I want you to connect directly with me. And so now my personal Google Plus page for Brian Sovryn it's totally public. you can circle me, do whatever, and I'll post all kinds of stuff. I usually post really interesting stories there, all kinds of statuses, usually some good subjects. So it's a lot of fun. Google Plus is great. So, please, if you still want to join me there, please do join me there. You can actually, there's a quick URL for it, and it's gplus.to/Brian Sovryn, Sovryn, of course. So anyway, so that's that. I think we've got all that covered. Let's get right into our story, our opening story, which is a good story. I love sharing some good news. And what this is open source software is taking over in businesses. And it's according to the article, it's moving into all businesses. And this is coming from ZDNet by Stephen J. Vaughn Nichols. And let's just start reading it. We all know open source has become an important tool in pure software development. What's now becoming clear, according to a Black Duck Software and Northbridge Venture Partners open source survey that was released on April 17th of 2013 and events at the Linux Foundation's Linux Collaboration Summit, is that open source is now helping improve enterprise networking, smart cars, and academia. For example, at the summit, the simple fact that the Linux Foundation was successful in getting such mortal business enemies as Big Switch, Cisco, and Juniper on the same page in the Open Daylight project to open source software defined networking is amazing. Now, okay, these are like Cisco and all them. They're the bigwigs in like working with IBM to do networking and all this stuff, all closed source. So they're accepting now, open source software, these companies. And that's that's part of the excitement, is that you're getting, all these dinosaurs of tech companies. Not to say they still don't innovate, but you're getting some of these dinosaurs that are just like, okay, yeah, open source is the way. And so very exciting. We'll continue on. It's not just lip service to finding a common way to implement SDN's core open floor protocol. The members are putting in tens of millions of dollars in resources for code that will be openly shared with everyone, including non-members. So they're really embracing open source. They're putting their money where their mouth is. And it's true open source. It's being open to everybody, which is just incredibly exciting. Why are they doing this? As executive director of the Linux Foundation, Jim Zemlin said, "Open Daylight members can share on a level playing field where no single actor can dominate the process. They understand that they can gain more by working together in an open source way with open source governance while still competing in the marketplace." I love it. I love the attitude of it. Because, there's so many times where we feel like, we have to compete, we got to go dog eat dog on everybody. And I think that's kind of a failing structure. I don't, I understand the appeal to that, especially to libertarians and like anarcho-capitalists and whatever, that, competition, that's everybody's going to, the winner wins, the winner takes all, and, and all this stuff. And I have a little bit of a problem with that, because I think, one of the ways to peace is to eliminate the idea of scarcity. One of the big selling points that we have for an open market, for a real open market, real free market, which we don't have now, is that the market will probably come up with a way to eliminate scarcity in general, be it with food or whatever. And my concern is that, this whole competition thing is based upon the idea that there is scarcity. And so what I want to see more is this cooperation. I think that's the real trick to really being creative, to really being, because I feel like, the whole competition thing, I think that's where people they take that kind of thinking and they say, okay, well, that's why we need patents. That's why we need copyright, because no one else can take what I have. You know what I mean? We've got to compete. I got to be better than the next guy, blah, blah, blah. And there's nothing wrong with having the desire to be the best. I mean, I'm not complaining about that. But we can work in this open environment where it's just about creation and now but not about competing against one another. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm sorry, I shouldn't ask that. You can't reply to me when I say, do you understand what I'm saying? But if you do want to reply, of course, you can email me at sovereigntech@hush.ai. We'll keep going with the article here. The same is true in the automobile industry, as Matt Jones, a senior technical specialist for Jaguar Land Rover infotainment systems, said at the summit, competitors such as Jaguar Land Rover and Toyota are working together on common operating systems and application programming interfaces, which is APIs, because they can focus on delivering applications and not worry about operating system infrastructure. When was the last time you bought a car based on its operating system? Jones asked. And that's a good point. They're just like, why don't we all just kind of use the same thing? Because, right, when was the last time you bought a car based upon the operating system? So, they're seeing it as a way to maybe streamline and to be able to essentially, if people that enjoy Land Rover make an app for Land Rover, that it can be used in Toyota as well, and everybody wins. And quite frankly, the point is accurate that, you're either going to buy a Toyota or a Land Rover. You're not going to buy a Land Rover because, oh man, those Land Rover APIs are so good. No, you're going to buy a Land Rover because you want to go off-road and you want to do it with the touch of class. Or you're going to buy a Toyota because Toyota has a tremendous track record. Despite any, I think a lot of people remember that whole accelerator problem that occurred where the Toyota, a few years ago, where Toyota cars would just accelerate. I'd have to look into that more. Maybe that'd be a good episode of Sovereign Tech or something to talk about, but I think they found out that it wasn't actually Toyota's fault. Anyway, that doesn't matter. So, more with the story. Away from the conference, the recently released survey of more than 800 open source savvy business professionals revealed that they see the most important open source trend in the next 2 to 3 years to be on the desktop, in the cloud, at Microsoft. Yeah, right. No, and no. Growth of open source knowledge and culture in academia ranked highest overall. Now imagine that, okay? Let's read the last bit here. Why? That's easy. Linux and open source needs people. As the recent Linux job survey found, managers from corporations, small and medium businesses, government and staffing agencies want Linux professionals, and they needed them yesterday. As John Corbett said in his Linux weather report at the summit, only about 10% of Linux kernel developers are now working on their own. And the only reason they're not working for a company that supports their Linux programming is because they don't want to. If you can get code in the Linux kernel, you can have a job anytime you want. Now that's exciting. In the idea that, if you want to have a lucrative job in the computer world, learn Linux, because everybody wants to use Linux. For a million reasons, there's people that, that people want to use Linux. One of them being that, like Android. Okay, take Android. Now, is Android its own operating system? Yeah, sure. Is Chrome OS its own operating system? Yeah, sure. But it's all based on the Linux kernel. So all these companies that want to come up with their own operating systems, and in fact, this is kind of a point of annoyance for me. All these companies that want to come up with their own, operating systems, which I think is great, because, why be stuck with just choosing between 3 operating systems? Linux, Android, or Linux, Windows, and OS X. Why not have a million to choose from? I think that's awesome, But all these companies that want to make new operating systems, they just base them off of Linux. And so you're guaranteed a job if you work in Linux. But I will say this. This is the annoyance that I was talking about, is that I'd like to see somebody come up with a new kernel. I want to see something besides Linux, and I don't mean BSD. I know about BSD. I know about React OS. I want to see a real big company like push. Like I remember a few years ago, this would be 2006 maybe, HP was talking about, this is back when HP still innovated. HP was talking about, we're going to come out with our own operating system and we're going to, do tablets and all this stuff. And then a day later they're like, and it's based off of Linux. And I was like, oh, no, do something exciting. Come up with a new kernel, But maybe that'll happen in the future. Who knows? In fact, maybe that's the most lucrative place to be, is to create a new open source kernel besides Linux. I would love to see that, and I'd even, if someone did like a Kickstarter program for that, I would be all over it. Let's see. We'll just a little bit more to this article. One interesting change from the last survey, this is the survey where they're getting this information from, was how important people ranked the factors that matter to open source adoption in business. One is better quality, the other is freedom from vendor lock-in, the other is flexibility, which is access to libraries of software, extensions, add-ons. 4 was elasticity, ability to scale at little cost or penalty. Another one was superior security, pace of innovation, lower costs, and access to source code. The 2012 survey results had freedom at number 1, freedom from vendor lock-in. Okay. Flexibility, which is the ability to access libraries and of software and extensions, was number 2, and quality was 3rd place. One surprising result here is how low access to source code ranked. It ranked lowest of all the factors, with 14% ranking it unimportant. Historically, code access is always ranked as the most important to free software supporters. Now, that's interesting. One more interesting result was how this group perceived the relative importance of open source versus proprietary alternatives. Many people believe that the low cost of ownership is the single most important reason companies turn to open source. It's important, but it's not number 1. So instead, the top 3 are competitive features and technical abilities, security concerns, and then low cost. Okay, so it's not that people want something for free. That's the point that this is making. And that's okay if you do want something for free. There's nothing wrong with that. But quality is a big deal. And if they're running to open source, clearly they must feel that Apple's not delivering quality and Microsoft's not delivering quality. That's an interesting statement in and of itself. And then the other, access to source code was pretty low. I am shocked at that as well. But freedom was number 1, that they didn't want to be locked out, that they wanted control. So it's not, and I'm not exactly, this article doesn't exactly say what they mean by from vendor lock-in. Maybe what they're saying is that they want freedom of cross-platform use. That's why perhaps they want number 2, which is, access to the software libraries and extensions and add-ons. So it seems like what people really want is they don't want to be locked down to like specific ecosystems, which is humorous because that's what Microsoft and Apple are pushing for. No, we want you to use our stuff. Google is a little bit better on that in that they're making their products work for everybody because they're not necessarily tied down to an operating system. And in fact, even if they were tied down to an operating system, this is very interesting. Just this past week, this is April 2000, now we're in May of 2013, but just the past week of April 2013, Google released kind of their premier software offering that they made for Android, which was Google Now. And Google Now is kind of a Siri competitor. Siri, of course, is what is proprietary to Apple iOS, which is like, you can ask a question and Siri will respond verbally. Google Now doesn't respond verbally, but you can ask verbally Google Now a question and it's going to come up with some answers, through a Google search or whatever. Or it'll use even another app like Google Maps to bring up to give you directions and all these things. And it works really, really well. Everybody loves it. In fact, some people are scared of Google Now because it often tells you things before you even asked. It just like it gets to know you. That's why it's Google Now. And amazingly, this is kind of the premier, because one of Google's missions as a company is to create the Star Trek computer. What do I mean by the Star Trek computer? The Star Trek computer is the one where you can ask it a question and in any way, you can use all the colloquialisms you want and it'll give you an answer. Or you can ask any question and it'll give you an answer. Kind of like Wolfram Alpha. I don't know if you're aware of that. That does sort of the same thing. But anyway, that's Google's mission in life, or at least one of them. And Google Now is a big part of that. Now, again, so they have their own operating system, which is Android. And they released Google Now initially for that, but just this past week they released it for iOS, which has Siri itself on there. That's amazing. Absolutely amazing for a company to release for free. Of course, yes, they make money through the ads, so it's not technically for free. I understand that. Okay, but for a company to put out their premier product on the on their competitors' operating system. That is nothing less than incredible. But that's what's happening. That's what these people are talking about, is that they don't want to be locked in. At least that's what I think they're talking about. Again, the article doesn't explain it very well, but I think they're talking about they don't want to be locked into these ecosystems. They don't want to be locked into, whatever. And they want access to the libraries. Google's usually pretty good about that. You can access their APIs. You can root your phone. You can root your even Google's like premier hardware for Chrome OS, which is the Chromebook Pixel. You can load Linux onto that. And in fact, just this week also, Linus Torvalds, the guy who created Linux, he just, he released Linux kernel 3.9, which now fully supports Chrome and the Chromebook Pixel itself, because he loves that computer. So open source is taking over. That's the bottom line that this article is making out of ZDNet, which is great. Let's just read there's one last kind of a conclusion little paragraph here, and we're going to read it. What does it all mean? In a statement, Tim Yeaton, president and CEO of Black Duck Software, said the 2013 Future of Open Source survey results point to a cultural shift in business where companies are employing a new level of sophistication as they work within the open source communities to attract talented developers and influence projects while maintaining good citizenship in the community. The technology, as well as the tenets of open source, are being adopted, the surest indicator of the positive changes that can come with open source software. So beautiful. That's a great article. I mean, that's as good a news you can get in the computer world as you can get. The fact that all the giants, they're all taking on open source. Maybe not Microsoft may not be taking on open source, and Apple may not be taking on open source, but everybody else is. And is that going to leave Apple and Microsoft in the dust? Maybe. If someone said that to me, someone asked me that question, what do you think, Brian Sovryn, about that? And I'd probably say, yeah, I think it's going to leave them in the dust. This proprietary stuff, as well as it may work, is falling apart because clearly these open standards are working as well. This open source software is working very well. And this cross-platform stuff is working very well. Another company that's kind of leading the charge with this is Valve with their Steam software. They put it out on Linux and it's huge. And Microsoft's shaking in their boots over it, because what if Linux becomes the premier gaming system? Not that Valve is open source, but cross-platform is more important than code access, apparently, according to this results. So anyway, exciting news. I love reading it. We'll be back with some more. This is Sovereign Tech on location. Are you tired of people wasting away all their precious time? Then stop using the same social media as them. Google Plus is a centralized hub for all of your Google services, your ideas, and your passions. Google Plus has a much more international user base, as to where other forms of social media center around so-called developed nations that really don't do anything exciting in the first place. Google Plus has almost no spam and has very few cat pictures of police, or anything else government-related. Stop using Facebook. You have an alternative. Start using Google Plus today.
Tech Roulette. Want to play?
It is time for Tech Roulette, where I cover the stories that get sent to me. And that I do kind of an eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Though sometimes I will just do the ones that I think this is relevant, and so I'll run with that story. And this week we've got a pretty interesting one from a listener, and it's from Wired, and it's a science article. So, and that's okay, because Sovereign Tech is the show about science and technology. And if you have articles you want to send to me, you can send them to sovereigntech.com. There's actually Ask Brian a Question or Submit a Post available there on the right-hand side of the screen, and you can submit stories there. Also, you can email me at sovereigntech@hush.ai, And, I'll look at the stories there. You can get in touch. You can share it with me on Google Plus at gplus.to/Brian Sovryn. And there's also the Facebook page if you want to use that. I keep forgetting that people still use that, that they use Facebook in general. But so, you can get in touch with me there too. So anyway, this article is Time Crystals Could Upend Physicists' Theory of Time. What the hell is a time crystal? Sounds very Doctor Who. I can't stand Doctor Who. The modern one. But we'll check this out and we'll see we'll see what this is all about. In February 2012, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist Frank Wilczek decided to go public with a strange and, he worried, somewhat embarrassing idea. Impossible as it seemed, Wilczek had developed an apparent proof of quote-unquote time crystals, physical structures that move in a repeating pattern like minute minute hands, rounding clocks without expending energy or even winding down. Unlike clocks or any other known objects, time crystals derive their movement not from stored energy, but from a break in the symmetry of time, enabling a special form of perpetual motion. Whoa, perpetual motion. Wait a minute, I thought that doesn't exist. Okay. Most research in physics is continuation of things that have gone before, said Wilczek, a professor at MIT. This, he said, was kind of outside of the box. Wilczek's idea met with a muted response from physicists. Here was a brilliant professor known for developing exotic theories that later entered the mainstream, including the existence of particles called axions and anyons, and discovering a property of nuclear forces known as asymptotic freedom, for which he shared the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2004. So this guy's won a Nobel Prize. He's serious. The Nobel Prize isn't that serious. I know some people who've won the Nobel Prize that really... why? Like maybe President Obama? But perpetual motion, deemed impossible by the fundamental laws of physics, was hard to swallow. Exactly, like I said earlier, I thought that was impossible. Did the work constitute a major breakthrough or faulty logic? Jacob Zarkuski, a professor of physics and head of atomic optics at Jagiellonian University in Poland, who wrote a perspective on the research that accompanied Wilczek's publication, says, I simply don't know. Now, a technological advance has made it possible for physicists to test the idea. They plan to build a time crystal, not in the hope that this perpetuum mobile will generate an endless supply of energy, as investors have striven in vain to do for more than 1,000 years, but that it will yield a better theory of time itself. Okay, so they're not... When we're talking about perpetual machines, a lot of times when someone talks about that, it's based upon the idea that you can create endless energy, like this loop, or what they call over unity, they call it. And, essentially, like, for an example of what a perpetual motion machine would be, is that you would create, let's say you would create a funnel, okay, like a funnel that you pour water into, and it would loop around, the funnel would loop around back into the mouth of the funnel. Do you get what I'm, okay? And when you pour the water in, it would, what the theory is that when you pour the water in, the gravity would force the water to go down the funnel and then back up and down back into the funnel, so that the water would continuously flow forever on its own, and thus would be perpetual motion. Physics generally says that's impossible. You can't do that. And by the way, that funnel trick doesn't work either. But a lot of people have tried. So anyway, let's continue on with the article. The idea came to Wilczek while he was preparing a class lecture in 2010. I was thinking about the classification of crystals, and then it just occurred to me that it's natural to think about space and time together, he said. So if you think about crystals in space, it's very natural also to think about the classification of crystalline behavior in time. So again, they're not talking about making an actual perpetual motion machine. They're talking about how is this going to affect time. And they're accurate in saying that space and time are the same thing. They are not two separate existences. When you travel through space, you travel through time. When matter crystallizes, its atoms spontaneously organize themselves into the rows, columns, and stacks of a three-dimensional lattice. An atom occupies each lattice point, but the balance of forces between the atom prevents them from inhabiting the space between. Because the atoms suddenly have a discrete rather than continuous set of choices for where to exist, crystals are said to break the spatial symmetry of nature, the usual rule that all places in space are equivalent. But what about the temporal symmetry of nature, the rule that stable objects stay the same throughout time? If you're getting lost, don't worry, you can catch this in the show notes, and I will be wrapping this up to hopefully where it all makes sense. So bear with me. Wilczek mulled over the possibility for months. Eventually, his equations indicated that atoms could indeed form a regularly repeating lattice in time, returning to their initial arrangement only after discrete rather than continuous intervals, thereby breaking time symmetry. Without consuming or producing energy, time crystals would be stable in what physicists call their ground state, despite cyclical variations in structure that scientists say can be interpreted as perpetual motion. For physicists, this is really a crazy concept. To think a ground state, which is time-dependent, said Hartmut Hafner, a quantum physicist at the University of California at Berkeley, the definition of a ground state is that this is energy zero. But if the state is time-dependent, that implies that the energy changes or something is changing. Something is moving around. How can something move and keep moving forever without expending energy? It seemed an absurd idea, a major break from the accepted laws of physics. But Wilczek's paper on quantum and classical time crystals, the latter co-authored by Alfred Schapper of the University of Kentucky, survived a panel of expert reviewers and were published in October 2012. Wilczek didn't claim to know whether objects that break the symmetry of time exist in nature, but he wanted experimentalists to try to make one. It's like you draw targets and wait for the arrows to hit them, he said. If there's no logical barrier to this behavior being realized, then I expect it will be realized. Let's see, the big test. I just lost my place here in the article. And we're getting back to it, and there you go. That's what you get for being on location. In June, a group of physicists led by Shang Shang, a nano-engineer at Berkeley, proposed creating a time crystal in the form of a persistently rotating ring of charged atoms or ions. Okay, so now you're getting a picture of what one of these things actually looks like. The group's article was published with Wilczek's, and since then, let's see, did they give it a shot? Patrick Bruno, a theoretical physicist at the European Synchrotron Radiation Facility in France, has voiced dissent in the academic literature. Bruno thinks Wilczek and company mistakenly identified time-dependent behavior of objects in excited energetic states rather than their ground states. There is nothing surprising about objects with surplus energy moving in a cyclical fashion, with the motion decaying as the energy dissipates. To be a time crystal, an object must exhibit perpetual motion in its ground state. So let's see, what did it take to build this ion ring? And then we're going to wrap it up. In Albert Einstein's theory of general relativity, the body of laws governing gravity and the large-scale structure of the universe, the dimensions of time and space are woven together into the same fabric known as space-time. But in quantum mechanics, the time dimension is represented in a different way than the three dimensions of space, a disturbing, aesthetically unpleasant asymmetry. The different treatments of time may be one source of incompatibility between general relativity and quantum mechanics, at least one of which must be altered for there to be an all-encompassing theory of quantum gravity. Which concept of time is right? If time crystals are able to break time symmetry in the same way that conventional crystals break space symmetry, it tells you that in nature, those two quantities seem to have similar properties and that ultimately should reflect itself in a theory. This would suggest that quantum mechanics is inadequate and that a better quantum theory might treat time and space as two threads of the same fabric. The Berkeley-led team will attempt to build a time crystal by injecting 100 calcium ions into a small chamber surrounded by electrodes. The electric field generated by the electrodes will corral the ions in a trap 100 microns wide, or roughly the width of a human hair. The scientists must precisely calibrate the electrodes to smooth out the field because the like charges repel, and they'll force away from each other. The ions will space themselves evenly around the outer edge of the trap, forming a crystalline ring. Okay, the ions will vibrate in an excited state, but diode lasers like those found in DVD players will be used to gradually scatter away their extra kinetic energy. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. That's that's the experiment they're going to try. If the bright ion, is circling the ring at a steady rate, then the scientists will have demonstrated for the first time that the translational symmetry of time can be broken. It will really change our understanding, Lee said, but first we need to prove that it does indeed exist. Until that happens, some physicists will remain deeply skeptical. I personally think it's not possible to detect motion in the ground state. They may be able to make a ring of ions in a toroidal trap and do some interesting physics with that, but they will not see their ever-ticking clock as they claim. All right, so what they're trying to do is they want to show an ion essentially moving the path of time and show that it's just going to keep going and that it actually doesn't essentially progress forward in time. And because of that, they're going to prove that, that time works in a completely different fashion. And maybe, I think why people were excited about this article and they emailed it to me is that they were hoping, I am very, very I am notorious for making the statement that you can't travel backwards in time. Unless you did it like through a wormhole, which a wormhole is a rip in space-time fabric. And, but then wormholes in and of themselves are theoretical. Okay, we don't know that wormholes exist. Doesn't matter how many times we saw it on Star Trek. We don't know that wormholes exist. Can they theoretically? Yes. Could they theoretically rip in space-time? Space and time are the same thing, and take you back in time to some degree? I suppose. But is there any natural formation, like these time crystals, where you can effectively control how you travel through time and instead go back in time instead of just forward? No. there it is. Sorry. I mean, in my opinion, am I a bright MIT or Berkeley scientist like these guys? No. But from what I understand of their theory, how they're explaining things, I don't think they're going to get the results that they want. And in fact, they're almost admitting that what they're saying is that, there's this, it's not that you're going to actually get a perpetual motion. It's going to be that it moves so discreetly through the fabric of space-time that it looks perpetual. And I think that's kind of admitting the point that, that this isn't actually possible. It's just how it looks. Okay. Say at that level. And that's barely even the Planck scale. So yeah, I don't feel that this is going to change anything. I think the experiment is an interesting. All right. Here's something I love in science. One of the things I love in science is when they prove things wrong or when they prove that things aren't so. That's real science. And it's very important science to it's just as important to prove what things are so that it is to prove things that aren't so, if you take my meaning. Okay. And so this is good. I'm not against them doing this kind of experiment. That way, that they can, that they can show, okay, no, time works just, under the same old, Albert Einstein quantum mechanics, essentially. So that's fine. I'm not opposed to it, but do I think that, and what I think people are hoping, is that somehow, we can, this is going to lead to some degree of time travel because we can, control how things, and we're going to understand, how to travel through time, and we can have a better understanding of how time travel works, blah, blah, blah. Nope. That's just my answer to it, is that I don't see that happening. In fact, there was another article that I posted on on my personal page, Brian Sovryn's Google Plus page, that talked about how even now, more so, the more science gets done, the more Einstein's theories of special relativity, general relativity from 100 years ago, essentially, are being proven more right and more right and more right. Okay. And in fact, their experiments this article, that I was reading, not this one that we're talking about here, but this one that I was reading, is saying that, scientists are spending a lot of their time just trying to disprove Einstein, just trying to disprove relativity to show that there's more. And I think that's great and a noble pursuit. But what they're just constantly finding is that, wow, no, these theories from 100 years ago, they're still spot on. And that's amazing. And so this is another case of that where they're trying to show that, hey, maybe quantum mechanics doesn't really explain it. And I can understand the desire to want to really, get at the heart of quantum mechanics. Okay, because there's a lot of things in quantum mechanics that just don't make any sense, and they really make you scratch your head. Like you take the idea there's experiments done where a point of light, a photon of light, the exact same photon of light existed in two places at the same time. What do you do with that? I really like what do you say to that? That's such a mind fuck that you can't. Yeah. So I understand why you want to get deeper into it, and so I'm all for that. But again, one of the reasons I think the emailer sent this to me is that they had their Doctor Who visions of grandeur where they're going to travel back in time. No, I don't think that's going to happen. And again, outside of a wormhole, which again, those have to be proven in the first place that they actually exist. I am open to them I am open to them existing if we find them, because they're technically possible. But until then, no, that's not happening. Can you time travel into the future? Absolutely. The science proves that that's possible. It is absolutely possible to travel into the future. But this doesn't affect doing this study on time crystals has no bearing on has no bearing on whether or not we can go into the travel fast forward into the future. We know that's possible. So that's not even a concern. So again, I think the point of this getting sent to me was so that the person was, does this mean we can travel back in time? And they wanted to disprove one of my statements, and that's fine. I love it. Send me emails like that where you question kind of like the scientific or technological claims I make on this show, because when I'm wrong, I will give you all the credit in the world if you want it. And I am always happy to be wrong. Okay. Well, I'm not happy about it, but I always enjoy being wrong, because that means that my entire thought process kind of changes and grows. And that's a good thing, for any human to go through. Always good to challenge your perceptions. I say this all the time. The instant you think you know something is the same instance that you stop thinking. Well, you can email me about that phrase if you want. But this is Sovryn Tech. I'm Brian Sovryn, and I'll be right back with more.
Are you ready?
I've never seen anyone so treated like a god in my life.
Brian Sovryn as guest co-host tomorrow night, and so that should be a good show.
On that note,
we just added Brian Sovryn.
Okay, we haven't.
Oh, is he good?
He's been in the audience.
He's certainly got opinions on things. Yes.
I'm so close to being like God. No one is above me. Okay, absolutely no one. I don't take orders from anybody, and that's how much closer to God can you get?
Is there anything he doesn't do better than everyone else?
Oh, that's just his way of talking. He's one of the best.
Break it down!
Catch Sovryn Tech, the show about technology and how it can set you free with me, Brian Sovryn. That's Sovryn at SoundCloud.com/Sovryn Tech.
Think you can tell me what to do?
Wow. Oh. It's a website of the week.
Welcome to Website of the Week, where I cover websites that I find particularly interesting or things that I may find useful. Go down the list and I've gotten. Thank you again. Please do not hesitate to contact me and to contact the show, be it through SovrynTech at hush.ai, SovrynTech.com, the Google Plus page, or even the Facebook page if that's your bag. And because a lot of people have told me that, oh wow, your pick of the week, your website of the week, your software of the week, really, really helpful. That was exactly what I was looking for. And, sometimes maybe I'll talk about in a listener email if you, explain how you used it and, just how much it helped you, which I think is fabulous. And this week, this actually got submitted to me from a listener, and it's called Auphonic.com. And it's kind of a software, but it's through a website. It's not something you can download. Okay, so it is technically a website of the week. And what they do is they do post-production. Say you're doing a podcast like I'm doing right now. I would upload it to this website, and they would do automatic audio post-production. It doesn't work so well. I mean, this isn't something that would be done for music, at least not yet. Their main approach is more towards, like broadcasters and podcasts, radio shows and things like that. But here, we can read right off of it. We analyze your audio and do whatever is necessary to achieve a professional quality. They do intelligent leveler, which levels between speakers, and it levels, music and speech. So it's like there's a program out there called Levelator. It does this all for you. It levels out your sound so that there's no big pops and that everybody kind of sounds on a volume standard the same, or coming out of like a stereo signal. Loudness normalization, the same idea, where it's going to keep these pops from happening. What can happen if you ever do any actual like podcasting or broadcasting or whatever, you're going to see points where when you get loud or you do certain things, and you may even hear them, like you may even hear them on this show, because sometimes my audio pops. You'll see on the waveform, you'll see like this, where it just gets suddenly really loud. And what this would do, this website, running your podcast through it, will normalize that out. Audio restoration, it does, noise and hum reduction, and filtering of low frequencies, which is great because that can get rid of that sound of the air conditioner in the back, or things like that. Optimal encoding and metadata management, so that they do the best job. If you send them whatever you send up to them, if you send them the WAV file or an MP3, and you however you want it to come down, be it as an it is an AAC file or an OGG file or a FLAC file, whatever, they're going to make sure it's the best sounding one. It also does chapter marks. And, it's amazing. It really, really makes your sound come out really crisp. I've just started experimenting with it, and I ran one episode through, and I could really, really tell the difference. It is free. It is definitely worth looking into. They do have, I think they have apps now to where you can access it better for iOS and for Android. And I haven't messed with the Android app yet, but maybe I'll do an update in a future episode of Sovereign Tech, and I'll mention, maybe just like at the beginning of the show, I'll mention that, oh man, did this work? But believe me, when you do it through the website, it works, and it sounds good. Anyway, so check it out, auphonic.com. That's AUPHONIC.com. And I'll be right back with more. This is Brian Sovryn.
Time now for 90 Seconds on Sex with Dr. Paul.
If you believe popular mythology, chastity belts with locks in the front existed as far back as the 1100s, when crusaders who were leaving for war were said to have put them on their female partners to help keep the women chaste during the 10 or more years that the crusaders were crusading. Well, despite this myth, no such contraptions actually existed at that time. The idea of chastity belts seems to have first been dreamed up during the 16th century by Renaissance poets as a poetic device to convey the idea of being true to each other. The first real chastity belts weren't created until the 1800s. Instead of being used to keep women from straying sexually, these torture devices seem to have been designed to keep boys and girls from masturbating. Now, there may have also been a practical use of chastity belts during the 1800s. Now, this was a time when women were just entering the workforce. Now, there were no legal protections against sexual harassment, but sexual harassment was so common it was quite a serious problem at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. So some women wore something like a chastity belt to help keep from being raped or molested while in the workplace. Now, the most popular use of chastity belts throughout history is actually today in the BDSM community by people who enjoy that particular form of kink.
For more, visit 90secondsonsex.com.
It is time for listener emails. You are here with the Golden Stallion of the Tech World, Brian Sovryn. And this week we've got an interesting listener email. Now, listener email, you can ask me anything you want. It doesn't even have, quite frankly, it doesn't even have to be technology related if you don't want it to be. It can be more personal, whatever, and I'm willing to answer it. I mean, the show is about science and technology. Technically, I suppose science covers everything. Science is everything. But, we can kind of talk about everything. So if you have some other, like some people have emailed me about, I want to quit my job and things like that. And you may say, what does that exactly have to do with the tech show? Well, there's answers to be had about that involve technology and that involves science. So I don't mind. You can really ask anything as far as listener emails go. I've even had some people, I haven't read these emails yet, but we will get to them. I like Tech Roulette, I do the listener emails eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And some of the, or I choose ones that, I may not see as particularly relevant yet. Like I have gotten emails about what I think about porn. And at some point I will get to that. And I will do that for a listener email section. Porn obviously is a big deal as far as the internet goes, and as far as any technology goes. It's always at the forefront of technology, which is an interesting point. But anyway, we will talk about that another time. What we have here, we've got an email, and this is about, it's about mining cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Litecoin and Terracoin. Hi, Brian. I really enjoy your show and find it very insightful and useful. Thank you, emailer. I appreciate that. I found your piece last week about, this was a couple weeks back, about how to build a Bitcoin miner quite interesting. And it goes on to say what exactly he did to build a Bitcoin miner. And he also mentions that he is buying an ASIC. An ASIC, and what an ASIC is that it's a computer essentially, or a USB drive, whatever. It's a chip anyway, that's specifically designed to mine, be it Bitcoins or whatever. And there's a couple companies that have come out with these. Avalon and Butterfly Labs come to mind, or that are making these, I should say, because Avalon, as far as I know, is the only one that's actually shipped any. Okay. Now, I'm not like, there's some people who watch the Bitcoin world, they just watch. In fact, maybe they watch it far more than anybody I've ever seen in the stock world watch stocks. And it's like their whole life, and that's fine. You choose to live how you wish to live. So I don't watch the news on Bitcoin that hard, I will admit. But anyway, as far as I understand it, Avalon is the only company to have released any ASICs, and even that, it's very few. Butterfly Labs has yet to release their their actual ASIC models, which is what a lot of people were waiting on. And that this emailer, and rightfully so, this emailer said they were going to grab one, and that's fine. So anyway, I'll read my response quick here. Thanks for your interest in the show and for the question. I will answer this in a future episode of SVT, but I will also answer it right now. The emailer was planning on buying certain equipment based upon certain prices of things, which was time sensitive. So even though this email is a couple weeks old, I answered it right away. And all you have to do for listener email, if it's something that you need an answer for, like right now, let me know, and I will do my best to answer that. That doesn't mean I'm going to be able to get to you right away, but I will answer it as fast as I can. So anyway, the main thrust of the person's email was that, should I count on the ASIC, or should I go with a standard GPU, meaning graphics processor unit, a GPU based mining solution? Okay. So again, the ASIC is something that there aren't that many out there that even exist. And the company that's making them, all right, being Butterfly, Avalon, I guess, is shipping, but Butterfly Labs isn't shipping them out, and the technology is changing all the time with ASICs, and changing so bad that maybe when you finally say you hash down $2,000 for an ASIC, or whatever the price is, if it's $1,200, the price doesn't matter. I'm not concerned with price. whatever you're laying down the money for as far as price for the ASIC, what you get in the end may not be what you paid for, is my point with the ASIC miners. Okay, so I consider them dubious. I consider them problematic just in their existence, these ASIC miners. They are out there, no question about that. They are out there, they are real. Okay, but your ability to get your hands on one in a specific time frame may not be, that may not be the best. Or that may not even really be feasible. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. So again, the question is GPU miners over ASIC miners. I personally went with a GPU miner. Me and the lovely and hyper-intelligent Stephanie Murphy, we have a Litecoin miner. And I'll explain, again, why I went with the GPU. First off is that I could build it and have it right now. Okay, now I've been going through quite a learning process, and I think Stephanie and I are going to be doing a podcast in the future about our experiences with a mining rig. But anyway, as far as the GPU one, I mean, it's something that could be purchased right now. It ended up costing about $2,000. Okay, I already talked about this in a previous episode of Sovereign Tech. And the kind of the win-win out of it, first off, why am I mining, even why am I mining Litecoins? And the emailer emailed me back and was asking about why do I think Litecoin will fare better than Bitcoin? And I'll go into that too. But we started mining Litecoins. First off, the difficulty wasn't as bad as it was to mine for Bitcoins. So it's kind of an emerging market, which is what Bitcoin was, and that's what everybody was happy to get into Bitcoin for, because they did very little work to actually, or paid very little to get them. And they're reaping large rewards right now. So that's kind of the same thing we were thinking with Litecoin. The other thing is that there's no ASIC miners to be a disruptive technology against Litecoins. Now, supposedly, theoretically, you can make ASICs work on Litecoins, but then you'd have to rewrite the firmware or even totally new hardware to be able to affect Litecoins, because Litecoins work on a different. There's a lot of cryptocurrencies out there. 90% of them, as far as I know, 90% of them, or 99% of them, work off of the same blockchain as Bitcoin. Okay, the same technology. As to where with Litecoin, they actually wrote their own new kind of blockchain called Script. And so now that doesn't mean that when you mine Bitcoins that you get Teracoins. Okay, they're on different channels essentially, but they run off the same software, if that makes sense. Okay. So that's one advantage with Litecoin, is that you can't see, because if you buy an ASIC for Bitcoin, you can use the ASIC against any other cryptocurrency that's based off of Bitcoin, like Teracoin or Namecoin or whatever, as to where with Litecoin, you can't use ASICs against it. Now, yes, can ASICs eventually become a disruptive technology with Litecoins? Yes, it can. But considering how long it's taken for Bitcoin ASICs to get out there, I'm really not that worried about it, because I think it'll take forever for Litecoin ones to get developed, or at least it'll be years down the line, and by then I'll have mined, and purchased tons of Litecoins. So that's an advantage of Litecoins, the reason why I went that way. Now, why, again, let's talk more about the GPU versus ASIC. Again, I can have it right now. I can get a pretty good hash rate, especially when I'm doing Litecoins. And the other thing, too, is that when you consider exchanges, this is something I used to do a lot, which is foreign exchange, okay, where you're trading currencies. Like I would buy Russian rubles at a low with U.S. dollars, and then when rubles went up high, I would sell them back into U.S. dollars and make more money just by exchanging the percentages, if you get what I'm saying. And this is a trick you can do with Litecoin. And in fact, Stephanie's really good at it, at keeping an eye on the percentages and knowing when to do it. And so when the value of Litecoin as compared to Bitcoin is up, the percentage value, okay, obviously Litecoin isn't worth in US dollars what Bitcoins are worth. It's not even close right now. But if you watch the percentages as to how much they're worth, you can get essentially more Bitcoins with less Litecoins at a certain point. Okay. And so Litecoin mining is a good indirect way to get Bitcoins, because you can do an exchange. You can go to an exchange pool like, or you not an exchange pool, but you can go to an exchange site like BTC.com, and you can exchange out Litecoins for Bitcoins when the Bitcoins are at a high, when the Litecoins are at a high comparison to Bitcoins. Okay. If you have more questions about that, you can email me at sovereigntech@hush.ai. The other reason that I think with the GPU versus ASICS is that, let's say this whole cryptocurrency economy crashes. An ASIC becomes useless at that point, and you have $2,000 or whatever amount of money it costs, that goes down the drain. All right. As to where if it went down tomorrow, that mining rig I have is an awesome gaming machine. It's an awesome gaming computer. It's an awesome computer. Bottom line. And I can just, start using it the next day for computing, with 6 video cards or whatever. you get what I'm saying? So that's one of the advantages to the GPU, is that your investment with the GPU mining rig is potentially more solid. Okay. It has more uses. It's not just a one-trick pony. So that's something to consider. You may not care about that, and that's fine. I totally understand. The advantages of having an actual ASIC in your hand are astronomical right now. So if you can get one, I'm not opposed to you doing it. Please do it. That's great. Another point as to more do I consider Litecoins? Why do they have the potential to be bigger than Bitcoins? Litecoins run on a much faster scale, Litecoins are confirmed faster. There's a lot they put a lot of thought. They learn from, okay, what did Bitcoin not think of well? And Bitcoin did a great job. Bitcoins are great. There's no question there. So, but there's just a lot of software advantages that were put into Litecoins. The blockchain isn't as much of a problem. It's not as intensive, and it's not going to be as large as the one for Bitcoin is. One of the big problems people have right now with Bitcoin is that, if you want to go download the blockchain for the first time, the blockchain's like 10 gig now or something, or some ridiculous number. Okay. And because of that, it takes forever to download the blockchain and be able to even do any transactions or to have a wallet on your computer. So you have to use programs like Electrum, which puts the blockchain keeps it, in the cloud essentially, but still allows you to have your Bitcoins on your computer. So that kind of solved that. But anyway, but the ability to have the raw blockchain with Litecoin is a lot easier. It's faster, and it doesn't take up as much space. And this is something, why did Bitcoin do that? A lot of people ask that question. Why did Bitcoin go with the much larger blockchain? Or, why did they think they had to have known that eventually the blockchain would get to be 20, 30 gig? Well, I think they did know. I think Satoshi Nakamoto or whoever was well aware of that fact. But what I think they expected, let's say now Satoshi Nakamoto is in Japan. Let's say that Bitcoin was invented in Japan. In Japan right now, there's already services putting out 2 gigabit per second internet. The fastest we have in America is Google Fiber, and that's only 1 gigabit. This is 2 gigabit. Okay, so what they were expecting in Japan was that the speed with which you could transmit gigabytes of data, okay, like 10 gigabytes of data, would be so much faster than what it was in 2007 when the currency was devised, when Bitcoin was devised. So they expected technology to be able to catch up by that time, years down the line when Bitcoin would finally take off, and like the halving point would come, which just came this past year. They were, I think, and rightfully so, they were anticipating that first world countries would have much faster internet, and not that it'd be lagging like it is now. So anyway, hope that answers some questions. We kind of went all over the board there. I'll be right back with more. This is Brian Sovryn.
Spike.
Launch.
In the third age of mankind, an age plagued by an evil empire that seeks to destroy humanity, it is our last, best hope for peace. It is Babylon 5.
All fighter squadrons launched.
Get us out of here. Return fire.
Freeze them! Watch Babylon 5.
You can watch Babylon 5 and experience the greatest show in television history. See the entire series completely free by going to thewb.com/shows/Babylon 5.
Software of the Week.
It is time for Software of the Week, where I cover software that I consider beneficial or something clever or that I've used. Sometimes I will, and I haven't done this yet, but since we're at episode 20, we're in this for the long haul. Down the line, maybe I'll review software that I just think is not good, and that somehow is getting high praise. I'll bring it out to the point that, look, okay, everybody's saying this thing's great, but it's not. So maybe I'll do that in the future. But anyway, this week, this Software of the Week, it kind of blurs the lines of whether or not it's software, but I think it's pretty important. And what it is that Google is actually, there was a case a little while back where Bruce Willis was suing Apple or getting mad at Apple because when he was concerned, because when he dies, his music collection can't, according to Apple, can't be given to anyone else. So he can't leave. So say Bruce Willis bought $1 million worth of music, which he could do, and he wanted to leave it all to his daughters. He can't. It's not theirs. It belongs to Bruce Willis and Bruce Willis only. When Bruce Willis dies, it's not his anymore. And that's ridiculous, okay? Because if he bought CDs, he could just hand down the CDs. It's yeah, here, have my music collection. Here's my CDs. And Apple just didn't seem to really care. They came up with no real solutions to that as of yet that I'm aware of. Email me at sovereigntech@hush.ai if you are aware of where they have solved it. But Google has. Google has set up essentially, and this is linked to in the show notes, Google has said, okay, you can now choose what you're going to do with all of your data, all of your stored information, all your email accounts, your YouTube, everything when you die. And you can essentially, and I set this up myself already, not that I'm dying ever, but I set this up recently to where, or maybe it's not even if you're dying, if you're just say you get, I don't know, something bad happens to you and you end up in the Borneo for 6 months or 7 months and you get stranded there. What happens to your data? And you can control what happens, and you can leave to the amount of people. You can leave it with so many people. I've only left it with one, but you can leave it with more than one person. And you can send them little messages, what you want done. It'll send an automatic email to the person after, say you haven't logged in for 3 months. Google will realize that. And then they will send the email and they'll get all this stuff happening. There's different time frames. You can set it up to 6 months, maybe even a year. But this is really great that they're setting it up in the first place. And it'll send an email to the people that you have entrusted with your data and what you would like done with it. You can set it to after so many days, even after that, say the 3 month or 6 month period, comes to an end. And, after that, you can say, okay, now after 45 days after that 6 months, delete everything, just get rid of it all. Or you can just leave it consistently for the end of time in the charge of someone else, and they can do whatever you want with it. Some people may be interested in this. I've heard cases where there were people who are a woman's husband who died and she still posts with his Facebook account. Kind of weird, but hey, okay. That raises an interesting question, but here it is. I think it's really great that Google's okay, look, if you do disappear or if you die, you have control of what happens to your information. We will not keep it. You can just delete it. Okay. Yeah, maybe Google will keep a copy. Fine. I shouldn't have to say that, but, I thought it was a good move on their part. And again, it'll be linked to in the show notes. It's their inactive account manager is what the software is called. And it just, again, it gives you control of what happens when you die, what can occur. I imagine they may get feedback on this and may improve it in the future to where maybe it'll even wipe out your phone after so much time, which would be great too. So anyway, check it out and I'll be right back with more Sovereign Tech.
What does freedom mean? Tune in to LRN.FM to find out. LRN.FM is the Liberty Radio Network, a collection of live talk radio and podcasts, all coming from a principled pro-liberty perspective. LRN.FM show hosts aren't left, right, or conspiracy kooks. You can tune in 24/7 to LRN.FM via your phone, computer, satellite, and more. Listen free anytime at LRN.FM. That's LRN.FM.
Sovryn! Stop playing those video games!
Just a minute, Mom.
Game Talk.
It is time for Game Talk, my favorite section of the show. And this Game Talk, I have something awesome, or a really interesting topic, something I never really thought about before. And it was actually submitted to me by Christoph, who he's been a guest on this show in the past, and a good friend. And it was a YouTube video, and it's linked to in the show notes. You can watch the YouTube video. It's about, as far as the content that we're covering, it's about 5 minutes long. Overall, the video is like 8 minutes long. And what it's about, are you, the title of the video is buying Call of Duty a moral choice? And it's from the Idea channel, which is, it's a YouTube web series that is kind of, documentary series, which has actually won a lot of Webbies. It's really good stuff. I'm really enjoying it. And the point that the video makes is that, okay, guns are a big part of video games, and it's true. I mean, ever since like Contra for the Nintendo, ever since take Asteroids. The original arcade game Asteroids, where you're going around and you're blasting asteroids. Okay, so shooting things, it's a part of gaming. There's no question about that. But what the person kind of lays out is that now, just think of all the classic games all the way up until today, until maybe the past 5 years. Okay. That some of the guns have been outlandish. There have been simulators that are like army simulators that have been around for a long time, like America's Army, or even like the older Call of Duties that took place in like World War II. All this stuff, and you have like the battlefields. Okay, but the point that the video is making is that now you take like Battlefield 3 or any of the Call of Duties like since Modern Warfare up. Okay, like Black Ops or Modern Warfare 2, or whatever. Take your pick, okay, of the of the games in that series. And in that, now they're actually like the guns you fire are incredibly realistic. They're based off of real guns, right down to the names. They even they go to shooting ranges, like for Battlefield 3, they go to shooting ranges and they record the sound of, okay, let's say in Battlefield 3 they threw in like a Ruger Scout rifle. Okay. They'll record the sound of that gun and then input it into, and then you get the Ruger Scout rifle in Battlefield 3. I don't know that gun in particular is actually in Battlefield 3, but it's in there, and then it sounds exactly like the Ruger. You can also purchase, like there's the monetary values are kind of the same. Well, they're not exactly the same. Obviously it's in-game money or whatever, but there's a monetary value attached. The guns look like it, they fire like it. And because of all that, the game, you get licensing fees. Okay. To use these realistic guns. Okay. These companies are paying out and paying in. Okay. Game companies are paying for the license to use that gun, or gun companies are paying into to the game company, like say DICE or EA, whatever. Well, they're one and the same. But they'll pay into DICE and say, okay, yeah, we'll give you this much money if you put our gun into it, and advertise our gun. So it's not just like, these aren't the Portal guns, okay, which is a point that the video makes. These are not the Portal guns where, they're absolutely outlandish, and without question, you're not using a real gun, okay? I mean, just clearly. So, but the moral question that the video tries to bring up is that in buying these games like Call of Duty and Battlefield, or any other one that uses like realistic guns, are you supporting the arms industry? Are you supporting wars in so doing? And And it's a good question. I mean, when it was first proposed, while I was half watching the video, and you can watch the video, you can catch it at SovereignTech at sovereigntech.com. You can look at the show notes or the SoundCloud page, soundcloud.com/sovereigntech, and you can check out the show notes, and it'll link right to the YouTube video, and you can watch it for yourself and come to your own conclusions. Okay. But it asks the question, and I never really thought about that, and it got talked about a little bit on my personal Facebook page, and Christoph, I thought, made a great point. He said he felt, he didn't think that game purchases were morally responsible in the situation. He said it's kind of similar to the whole meat eating thing. I don't think eating meat or not is an ethical choice, but it's worthwhile to be conscious of where your meat comes from if you do eat. When it comes to meat, I try to buy from places that raise and kill the animals humanely, but won't go far out of my way to do so. That's probably the kind of stance that I would take with video games and gun licensing. And also, when it comes to first-person shooter games and morality, I'd actually say that realistic first-person shooter games have more moral impact as recruitment tools for the military than royalties paid to gun manufacturers. Okay, so I thought that was a great point. He compared it to meat eating, and I thought that was pretty solid in that, you can get into the idea like the ethics, you can't hurt that animal, which that can go too far because, again, you're going to step on an ant at some point. Are you just not going to move? You know what I mean? And so, so that's not ethical, but is the idea, buying guns from people that do licensing of the guns in the game and thus do inadvertently, or maybe not so inadvertently, fund, these companies that make death dealing machines. Yeah. Maybe it's not something you're going to give a whole lot of thought into, or maybe you won't even care. And I agree with him about it being far more about being a recruitment tool than it is about you, getting you into guns or supporting, the arms industry or whatever. Because an interesting story, and I tell this story kind of often, is that I went to a midnight release for a game, and it happened to be coming out at the same time as Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 was coming out. And I was friends with the with the owner of the GameStop there back in New York. And he, for this midnight release, which means it's like a party because, you can sell the game at 12:01 and everybody just wants to get their hands on it. And it was this big party, and I like midnight releases. I like those parties. I think they're nice. But what he did, he actually invited the local recruitment center, and they set up Humvees. They set up, they set up a literal base camp in this parking lot of the shopping center. And I was furious at the guy. I said, and he was a good friend. And I said, what the hell are you doing? What is this? This is about video games. What is this out in this parking lot? That's a problem. Okay. Well, I play video games all the time. Love video games. And I will not support Call of Duty. Not with this kind of stuff. And he told me that it wasn't even his idea, that Activision was emailing people saying, hey, this is a great way to, to do this, to get some excitement about the game and everything and to increase sales. And so Activision's pushing it too. This wasn't just some guy's idea. It was Activision pushing for this. And obviously I think the idea of joining a military is immoral. I don't like to toss around the word immoral and moral around a whole lot, but I think that is. I was in the military, okay? So, some people think that like, oh, you can only talk if you were there. Well, I was there, and let me tell you, it's an atrocious organization in its very existence. So yeah, I think it's something to be conscious of. If you are very, I don't like guns myself. It's fine if you own one. I'm not saying that. But do you want to make the conscious decision that you are essentially funding gun companies if you buy these games? That's up to you. But I think it's a huge question. And maybe we'll talk about it more sometime. It's pretty deep stuff. Maybe we'll do a whole episode on it at some point. Because it raises a lot of questions. So anyway, email me, sovereigntech@hush.ai, if you have any thoughts on it. This is Brian Sovryn. We'll be right back.
Are you searching for a mouthwatering, all-natural, sweet and sticky treat? What if I told you it was also made by a chef who believes in freedom, just like you? You're not dreaming. This is real. Head over to mandrick.com. That's MANDRIK.com. There you'll find George's famous baklava in classic and dark chocolate flavors. To those with special health needs, George's famous baklava also has a treat for you. Golden delicious, low-carb, gluten-free almond cookies. Order with PayPal or Bitcoins. In just a few days, your sweet treats will await you right at your doorstep. One more time, that's MANDRIK.com for George's famous baklava. Hacker Stories.
It is time for Hacker Stories, where we talk about hacking. And sometimes we talk about the heroes, of the world, which I think are hackers. Black hat, white hat, gray hat. I think they're all heroes in their own way. And we also talk about, sometimes a little hardware hacking, or even the generation of hackers coming up. There's a lot of people who wonder, with kids being so good with computers, what's the future going to look like if they all grew up to kind of be hackers? And while that may not be exactly happening, at least not in the, quote unquote, the first world, this is an interesting article. This is from device.com and by Evan Ackerman. And Ethiopian kids hack OLPCs in 5 months with zero instruction. OLPCs is a reference to, there's a project. It's a privately funded project called One Laptop Per Child, which is essentially trying to get the entire world, even in Africa and South America, wherever, to be connected, to the internet, and to have a laptop or a computer of some kind, to allow them to be creative and to communicate. And it's actually, a rather nice project. Of course, there's some people who think that OLPC is to get a camera everywhere in the world and to be able to control everyone. Whatever, if that's how you feel, that's how you feel. But let's go ahead and read this article. What happens if you give 1,000 Motorola Zoom tablet PCs to Ethiopian kids who have never even seen a printed word? Okay, so we're talking about, essentially they're laying it out that these are people that have very little as far as any what we would call a formal education. Within 5 months, the answer to that is within 5 months, they'll start teaching themselves English while circumventing the security on your OS, the operating system, to customize settings and activate disabled hardware. Whoa. Activate disabled hardware means that a lot of times these, when they make these tablets or even phones or whatever, they'll put chips in there just because they're kind of already there, or they may have plans for it in the future that allow for new forms of connectivity, like the Barnes & Noble Nook had a Bluetooth chip in it, but they didn't turn it on. So you could hack it and turn the Bluetooth chip on, and then you could use Bluetooth devices with it or whatever. So something like that. Anyway, the One Laptop Per Child project started as a way of delivering technology and resources to schools in countries with little or no education infrastructure, using inexpensive computers to improve traditional curricula. What the OLPC project has realized over the last 5 or 6 years, though, is that teaching kids stuff is really not that valuable. Yes, knowing all your state capitals, how to spell neighborhood properly and whatnot isn't a bad thing, but memorizing facts and procedures isn't going to inspire kids to go out and learn by teaching themselves, which is the key to a good education. Instead, OLPC is trying to figure out a way to teach kids to learn, which is what this experiment is all about. Exactly. Okay. This is stuff, this kind of thing, this is what, unschooling parents and the unschooling movement has been saying all along, that no, just teach kids how to learn, or at least not teach them, but nurture their desire to learn, and they'll figure things out on their own. Astonishing. So just to give you a sense of what these villages in Ethiopia are like, the kids and most of the adults there have never seen a word, or as in a written word. No books, no newspapers, no street signs, no labels on packaged foods or goods, nothing. And these villages aren't unique in that respect. There are many of them in Africa where the literacy rate is close to zero. So you might think that if you're going to give out fancy tablet computers, it would be helpful to have someone along to show these people how to use them, right? But that's not what OLPC did. They just left the boxes there, sealed up, containing one tablet for every kid in each of the villages, nearly 1,000 tablets in total. Preloaded with a custom English language operating system and SD cards with tracking software on them to record how the tablets were used. They're tracking them. Anyway, here's how it went down. As related by OLPC founder Nicholas Negroponte at MIT, we left the boxes in the village, closed, taped shut. No instruction, no human being. I thought the kids will play with the boxes. Within 4 minutes, one kid not only opened the box, but found the on-off switch. He'd never seen an on-off switch. He powered it up. Within 5 days, they were using 47 apps per child per day. Within 2 weeks, they were singing ABC songs in English in the village. And within 5 months, they had hacked Android. Some idiot in our organization or in the media lab had disabled the camera. And they figured out that it had a camera, and they hacked Android. I love this. This is so good. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, just like suddenly they're like, oh, well, what do we do with this? And they just figure it out. And, I know there's conspiracy people who are like, oh yeah, we're making everything into like that all these operating systems and computers are turning everything into pictures so that there's no words so that people can't learn. Okay. And they just like when you work at a, like they're making it like dumb people supposedly work at fast food places. That's not true at all. Very intelligent people work at fast food places. And they make everything pictures. So that way the dumb people that work, quote unquote, dumb people that work at fast food places can figure out how to, use it even though they can't read or something. No, clearly doing things like by using a graphic interface, okay, which is really the bottom line of that, actually makes it incredibly intuitive for people to use, which is the point. But it's not to make them dumber. It's to make them perhaps more intelligent. These people, okay, these kids, these little kids figured out how to hack the camera on Android and how to turn it back on after just a few months. So if anything, in my opinion, it's making them smarter. It's not making them dumber. It's not dumbing them down and making them more, obedient to control. Come on. This is so great. Let's see. Here's another story from the article. Miles from the nearest school, a young Ethiopian girl named Rael turns on her new tablet computer. The solar-powered machine speaks to her. Hello, would you like to hear a story? She nods and listens to a story about a princess. Later, when the girl has learned a little more, she will tell the machine that the princess is named Rael, like she is, and that she likes to wear blue. But for now, the green book draws pictures of the unnamed princess for her and asks her to trace shapes on the screen. R is for run. Can you trace the R? As she traces the R, comes to life and gallops across the screen. Run starts with R. Roger the R runs the red rug. It does this whole little game. As Rail grows, the book asks her to trace not just letters, but whole words. The book's responses are written on the screen as it speaks to them. It just goes down this whole thing. Now, we could get into the, perhaps the ethics of, well, it's teaching her to be a princess, and that's part of a material society or something. But let's also put in perspective here, it's teaching them how to speak and read English. Okay, it's not teaching them to be stupid and just do pictures. Okay, it's teaching them actual language. I think this is incredible. Absolutely incredible. A beautiful story to read that people that don't even know what an on switch is, they start turning things on with their incredible intuitiveness, inside of 4 minutes of never having seen what any of these things even are. It's an incredible testament to the human ability to learn, an incredible testament to the amazing intellect that children inherently have without us needing to teach them anything through some kind of ridiculous school system. And then they just start hacking things because it just makes sense. I love it. I absolutely love it. And in fact, it gives me some degree of hope in that I've always been concerned that, like, and I even talked about this in a past Sovryn Tech, if you don't teach kids like the command line, if you don't teach them code, that they can't figure things out, well, apparently that's not true. They can figure things out just fine. With what, and there's no real like pictures of what exactly, the operate. I mean, it's Android, so you can guess what Android looks like, but what exactly version of Android or what all was really on these machines, it doesn't go into it. But I'm pretty sure it was relatively graphical, and they figured it all out. They figured out even how to hack and turn on the camera. They went nuts and bolts on these things. And I think it's a tremendous story, tremendous testament to human brain power. And I mean, how can you go wrong? Catch it in the show notes, Sovryn Tech, or at SovrynTech.com, also SoundCloud.com/SovrynTech. And I'll be right back with more.
This is Stephanie Murphy, Sovryn Tech producer. You may know me from this show, but did you know that I have my own podcast? It's called Pork Therapy. Pork Therapy is a bit different from other shows. We cover current events, big ideas, and even relationship issues, all through the lens of how we can get more freedom in our lives. Oh, and you'll love Sex and Science Hour. Join me on my website, porktherapy.com. That's porctherapy.com. Now back to Sovryn Tech.
What are you doing? I can't believe I caught you again. Jesus doesn't approve of this little habit of yours.
I know, baby, I know it's wrong, but it feels so right.
Well, it ain't.
But I've been doing it since I was 12 years old.
It's nothing but a sinful perversion of nature, if you ask me.
But, baby, I don't ever want to stop looking at tech websites, new gadgets, video games, software, or any of that stuff.
Well, then I'm leaving.
Okay. Bye.
Pick of the week.
It is time for Pick of the Week. And this week, if you are offended by fecal matter, but yet you're not offended by people's limbs being blown off or, mass killings, then you may want to turn off the podcast now. And fecal matter, of course, I'm referring to shit. And, again, if this offends you, you don't like this kind of talk, that's perfectly fine. Go back to your pictures of governments killing millions of people. And what I'm going to talk about, it's a review. It's Pick of the Week, so I'm doing a review. And it's the Squatty Potty. Now, the I know you're thinking, what the hell? Has the Golden Stallion lost his mind? No, the Rembrandt of the podcast canvas is perfectly fine, and he's going to tell you about something that is really changing his life. And it's the Squatty Potty, and you can go to squattypotty.com. It's spelled exactly how it sounds, and you can look into this product. And what it is now, I've talked about this briefly on the show before, or maybe not so briefly. I do enjoy the paleo lifestyle, not just the paleo diet, but the paleo lifestyle and all, everything that entails. If you have questions about what exactly the paleo lifestyle is to me, you can email me at sovryntech@hush.ai, and I will maybe do it for a listener email. Real quick, before I get into more about the Squatty Potty, I did last week on the show, I was like, okay, look, if you want to know about the Book of Enoch, you can email me and I'll talk about it on a listener email. Someone did email me about the Book of Enoch, and I will get into that email and I will talk about it. So, you can still email me and reinforce me to maybe where I'd get to it quicker if you want to hear more about the Book of Enoch. But if you don't, that's fine. Anyway, so the Squatty Potty, what it is, it's just a stool. That's all it is. Not the stool that I dropped, but into the toilet. But it's a literal stepping stool. Okay, but it is uniquely kind of curved to where it fits around the toilet bowl. Okay, and if you really got to see this, like I say, just go to squattypotty.com while I'm talking, and you can check it out. Okay. and it has little grooves, or like a kind of a, I don't know, a raised texture where your feet can sit, that way your feet don't slip off the stool. It's plastic. They have wooden ones too on the website. And it's like $35. You can even get it on Amazon. In fact, someone did possibly through the link on sovryntech.com. On the right-hand side of the page of sovryntech.com, there's a link to where you can purchase stuff. It's to Amazon, and you can purchase stuff on Amazon. But when you purchase it through that link, we actually, the Stephanie Murphy Studios here actually gets a cut of that. Okay, and it goes right back into the studio. Like this week we bought the Zoom H1 for mobile recording, and that's really great, and we appreciate that. So if you want to get one, like someone did, you can get one through that link. You can also get to that link through porktherapy.com. That's porctherapy.com, which of course is the lovely and hyper-intelligent Stephanie Murphy show. And the Squatty Potty, so it's about $35, okay? And, you stand on it, you sit down, and it puts you on the toilet. It puts you in a crouched position, okay? And it allows your colon, it allows the shit to come out better, okay, bottom line. And it does. It comes out way better, way faster. In fact, I'm in awe. It kind of gives your butt cheeks a spread, and the stuff, it just, the shit just falls right out, there's no other way to put it. It is so great. I've really, really enjoyed it, using it. And it's not even just like a matter of ease of use. Okay. Now, yes, like the first time I tried getting on it, cause there's a couple ways you can go about this. You can sit down on the toilet, and then, like I said, the Squatty Potty like slides underneath the toilet because it has the, it's shaped to fit around a toilet bowl, and then you can like slide it out and then put your feet up. I actually get up onto the stool first, the Squatty Potty. I get up onto it first, and then I squat down. Okay. And it takes a little getting used to do that, especially if like you're wearing pants and your pants are around your ankles or whatever. The first couple times you're probably going to feel it's a little weird sitting down on it. And for me, I'm 6'1". I had to kind of do some aiming and, make sure everything was like going to the bowl, if you know what I mean. And so it does take a little getting used to. Keep that in mind. It does take a little getting used to. But once you're used to it, believe me, you just want to use it all the time. And you may never use another public toilet again because you'll just be like, wow, this is pointless. Where's my Squatty Potty? So there is, now, again, that little bit of a learning curve is totally made up for in the fact of just how efficiently you take a poop. Okay. And I really think so. But then there's the health considerations, and there's a great video on squattypotty.com that you can watch where it explains a lot of the health benefits. This prevents cancer, among a million other things. And again, just allows for much better, flow of excrement. And, and I believe it. It just makes sense because actually, in most parts of the world, that's really what people kind of do is they still just squat down and take a shit. Or when you go camping, it's what you do, and if you think about it from an evolutionary standpoint, okay, it just makes sense. You're like, oh yeah, well, of course that's what we did. We did it forever and our body was like designed to do that. It falls under kind of the same category of like, sitting down. We didn't sit down a whole lot. Chairs weren't invented till who knows when. And I don't think we copped a squat on, on rocks, all the time. In fact, it's pretty well scientifically proven, that we were designed to squat, and we didn't necessarily stand around all day either. We wouldn't like even get on our knees. We would actually, even just like say we were hanging out around a fire, oftentimes that was done in a squatting position. Okay, so we're very, very much designed to squat. It's just a natural, it's a natural position for us, for a million reasons. Other reasons may be sex. Hey, one of my favorites. So anyway, Squatty Potty, just a fantastic little little device. I mean, it's very simple. Like I say, it's a stool. And if you want, I suppose you could just, you could really just take a stool into the bathroom with you and just use that, have it so that it's raised, a few inches, maybe 6 inches or something, that the stool raises your legs up, and that way you're doing the squatting thing. If you're that concerned, and you're definitely convinced by the health prospects of this and you want to try it, do that. Try before you buy. I guess if you have a stool laying around and you want to use it. But I think, these kind of, like, particularly with the paleo lifestyle, a lot of these companies that are they filling a niche need right now? Certainly. But I really want to support these companies that are pushing for this kind of, this like paleo health stuff, because I want people to know that there's an interest. And I appreciate people taking the time to think these things out. You can say the Squatty Potty was, oh, come on, this is some kind of gimmick. No, I think there was a lot of thought put into this. And the company is very, very professional. They do a great job, great advertising campaign for one, and for two, they're great products in my opinion. And again, it just, if you really sit down and think about it, it just makes sense. But so the whole paleo lifestyle movement, this is no secret to the show, I am a huge supporter of transhumanism. One of the ways, really, how transhumanism is going to work, and transhumanism is that we get to the point where, we get beyond, our normal life and death, maybe, cycle, to where we're, instead of living, only 80 years, we're living 800. Okay. And I think one of the tricks to that is that, especially with this generation, pretty much people, or not generation, but I'll say people under 50 especially, I think those are the people that are going to be able to take full advantage of everything that transhumanism is going to have to offer. But the first trick, because a lot of people will say, well, yeah, you want us to like blend with computers and be cyborgs or something like that. How is that going to, that we're so far away from that happening technologically? That may be true. So the trick to do is to live long enough to get to the technology that, what they call LET, life extension technologies, okay, is to live long enough to where we can live 150 years or even 120. And then within that longer lifespan, in that time frame, 100 years from now, whatever, we figure out how to live 800 years or 1,000 years or forever, which is what I plan on. Okay. So I think it's very important to consider health. Okay. To consider your health. And there was a way that humans were, designed to operate for 100,000 years. And if we can look at that and do things to work towards that, okay, no, we don't know exactly how it was, but we have some pretty good ideas. One of them being the squatting to shed. Okay. So it's important to look into these things. And I think the Squatty Potty, as funny as it is, and I get it, I realize that people are probably going to be laughing their asses off, pun intended, during this segment when they listen to this. That's fine. But seriously, the Squatty Potty is part of that. It's part of that health. It's part of that, if it can keep you from getting cancer, oh man, sign me up. Because it's not something that hurts me. It's not something that I have to spend. It's not like it's a drug that I have to spend, $300 a month every month for the rest of my life on so that I can live. It's $35 right now, and you use it effectively forever. And and if there's a chance that it scientifically makes sense, that it's going to prevent cancer and help me live longer, and even give me just more time because I'll go to the bathroom faster. Though I can appreciate, relaxing in the bathroom. Okay. Believe me, I can appreciate that. But, if it's going to help me live longer or just give me more time in general, whatever way, shape, or form that comes to me, I think it's totally worth it. Totally worth a shot. There are ads running on LRN.FM for the Squatty Potty that I've heard. Of course, the show is on LRN.FM, and total thanks to Ian Freeman for helping with that, as well as Stephanie Murphy, great producer. She also loves the Squatty Potty too, just to let you know. If you want to if you want a scientist's perspective on the Squatty Potty, she loves it. She thinks it's great. She uses it all the time as well. So there you have it. Anyway, please do not hesitate to find me on Google+, gplus.to/Brian Sovryn. Let's make Google Plus the thing. It already is a thing. Facebook is dying. Anyway, find me there, sovryntech.com. In the meantime, I'll catch you next week. This is Brian Sovryn.
This has been Sovryn Tech. Visit us at sovryntech.com. That's SOVRYN tech.com. There you can connect with us, see more of what you've heard on today's show, and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is open source. We encourage you to share. Later, nerds.